Namaste, blessed be, and thank you for joining me here on my channel. If you're new here, I'm Akasha IndigoRae, and I talk about witchcraft, spirituality, self-improvement and development through spirituality, and pretty much all things witchy. So, welcome. I'm having today a cup of black tea with some lemon in it. I've had a cold for the past couple days, and it's kind of clearing out, so forgive me if I sound super nasal. I'm wearing a little microphone ear thingy to try to help me sound a little bit more clear. Isn't this cute? I found this at the grocery store. It's this little owl that's got a tea strainer at the end of it. So I've got some loose black tea leaves in there, and just some lemon to help my throat, little honey. Anywho, so the last couple weeks have been a little crazy for me. I've been traveling for work, and there's just been a lot of busyness and movement, and it's funny when you ask the goddess for something and it comes through in a way that you didn't expect. Like, I remember last year complaining that I never got to go anywhere and that I didn't get to travel and whatever, and now my my role in my organization requires some travel, and so now I am traveling and going places, and it's kind of like, whoa, this isn't what I meant, but you can't really predict how your prayers are going to be answered. You have to just kind of buckle in and trust that they know what's best for you. So I've been traveling a little bit, and it's kind of given me a little bit of a cold bug here. But I did get to see my family, which was really beautiful, which was really great. And it kind of brings me to the point of this talk today, or what I wanted to share with you. I've mentioned before that my dad is a minister, he's a songwriter, and he's very connected to his spirituality. So he practices New Thought, which is it's a branch of Christianity, but it's more connected to progressive ideas of, you know, God is within you and yada yada yada. You can Google New Thought. That's not the point of this video. So we always get into these conversations when I'm home about God and, you know, his beliefs and my beliefs, and we kind of end up doing this intricate dance of like respecting each other but holding pretty fast to like what we think about things. And we were talking about divinity. We were talking about you know, can you really express something that isn't God per se? Because if God is expressing as you, then you can't be something that God is not. But my theory was that's actually not true, because the whole point is free thought or free choice. So once divinity has been manifested in this personality form that is you, what you do with that is up to you. If you choose to stay in a connected place where whatever is meant for you is what you experience because you are focused on expressing what God is or what Goddess is through you, then sure. But you could take that in a completely different direction, right? You can express things that aren't divine. You can express things that aren't God or Goddess, nature. So that got me thinking a lot about concepts of deity and how we relate to deity, because, you know, Christians have a monotheistic way of relating to deity. So there is only God, there's only the one God, and he, they generally call him he, has created everything, and you know, everything is a reflection of God, but also, you know, you are not your own. Witches have a little different approach to this, where a lot of us are pantheistic, where we believe that all things are expressions of the divine, and God or goddess, spirit, divinity, the Wound Averse. I love that word, Wound Averse. The Wound Averse is present in every creative thing. Everything is divine. You touch, you touch the ground, you breathe the air, you watch the clouds, you feed from trees itself. Like, I was eating pancakes and I was thinking about how interesting that is, that literally somebody just tapped a tree and sap ran out and they figured out how to turn that into syrup. And yeah, so everything is divine. That's personally how I operate. And so with that, these ideas of how we relate to deity came to mind for me. And I started thinking a lot about this. And I know some people don't really feel comfortable even working with personified deity because it goes into this territory that feels like imaginatory, right? We can't really prove that these deities exist. And so there needs to be a big suspension of disbelief to start working with, Pan, because is that really a real person? But no, it's not a person in the sense that you're a person, right? So I wanted to talk about a couple of concepts of deity, how we relate to them, why it's even helpful to relate to personified deity as somebody that does work with personified deity. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is drawing up the divine from within yourself. So there are a couple of ways that we think about deity in the witchcraft world, and also in the psychology world. So one of which, a big one for a lot of people, is that deity represents archetypes. So they aren't actual beings sitting somewhere. They are archetypes that we humans aspire to be like. They are archetypes that are more like concepts that we aspire to be like in order to bring about certain possibilities in our lives. So someone who looks up to Athena might be somebody who's in charge in their job, right? They might be a manager or a boss. Or maybe they're even a warrior. That's so literal, but you could be in a situation where you have to run shit. Excuse my language. You have to run things. And so that archetype of the independent force to be reckoned with, who's a leader, and who, takes aim and has a sure shot, is important for you. So that's not to say that Athena is a real deity sitting somewhere just waiting for you to reach out to her so that she can help you. It's more that the concept of what she represents is what you are seeking to bring into your life. So this is an idea that comes from Jungian philosophy, and a lot of magical practitioners do ascribe to or subscribe to this theory that deities are archetypes. And archetypes go even deeper into like just different concepts of humanity, such as warriorship, motherhood, fertility and creation. What's another big concept in human life? Initiations, right? Excuse me. So different experiences that we have in human life, we relate to concepts of divinity, and we're able to look outside of ourselves and see that thing through mythology, through stories that have been written about that particular concept named as a deity, and through forming a personal relationship with that archetype, looking up to that archetype, we are training the subconscious to begin to awaken those abilities within our own concept of ourselves. So you'll notice who you are attracted to working with changes based on phases of life that you might be in. So that's the archetypal idea. The king, the queen, the emperor. Various tarot cards really show this. The empress, the Hierophant, right? Another concept of deity is that they are creations of our own imagination. So humankind observed various situations in their life where they needed to evoke certain energies, and not knowing who created them or who put them there, they began to relate to the world around them as forces of nature that could be worshipped, and gave these things a name. And depending on where you live on the planet, right, which culture you incarnated into, there may be different names for that same energy, right? So when we're talking about love, if you incarnated into a Greek community, you might see that concept of love as Aphrodite. If you're in a Roman situation, you might see that as Venus. African peoples, well, there are different religions throughout Africa, but if we're talking about the Yoruban tribes, they called that same energy Oshun. In Vodun, it's Urzuli. In, so on and so forth, right? We could keep going with this. So you have an idea of what I'm saying, that love is the concept itself. Seeing love show up as the romantic dynamic between two people where there's passion, the dynamic between parent and child, and really strong friendship bonds, and even strong bonds between person and pet. Like, we do treat our pets like they are our children. So that would be how we relate to deity, in that way, that we saw these concepts happening around us. We gave them a name so that we could connect to them on a more intimate level. And then over time, there was collective conscious buy-in that this thing equals this thing. And so the more people call out to Aphrodite with these same correspondences and these same ideologies and pictures, and we are creating an astral form that then takes on a life of its own. This is where it gets hard for people who have a hard time with magical concepts. Like, is this my imagination, or did I tap into something real and I just thought that I imagined it, right? Both things are true. So your imagination is creative. Think about it. You can't create anything until you've actually begun to kind of imagine it in your mind's eye. Until I see myself singing and performing something and hear some kind of tune in my head, and then I have a pen and a pencil, or a pencil and a pad, then those ideas can start to flow through as inspiration, and lyrics come out, and I can start to write music. But they didn't happen without me first imagining that that was possible, imagining that words could flow out and it could sound musical, right? Imagining that that could be brought from within me. Now, this idea of creating deity gets a little wobbly when you apply it to multiple religions, right? So is Jesus real, or did we create Jesus? Well, there are some archaeological evidences to say that that guy existed. And I say that guy because I'm trying to speak about this in a certain objective way. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But there's archaeological evidence that a man named Yeshua lived, and stories about his life and different miracles that he performed, etc. But depending on who you talk to, well, that doesn't mean he was the one and only son of the divine. And then when you get into a lot of other religious concepts, it becomes, well, Yeshua is the same as, you know, Osiris is the same as Dionysus, right? Like there becomes this whole thing where, oh wait, the thing that we created was the martyred hero. And it has all these different names, and we have all this buy-in to it, and that continues to perpetuate the power that comes from these deities. That's one concept. Now the concept that I happen to not listen to, but the concept that I connect with the most is that the Wound Averse, whoever, whatever, beyond me, divine order, manifested itself as everything that we see, and much, 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 much older than us. These deities are nature spirits, and they represent different aspects of the natural cycles of life and death and rebirth and everything in between. And they rule those areas, so to speak, so that we can make contact. We can make intimate, connective contact with one particular aspect of a divinity that is so large that we wouldn't really be able to hold it in our consciousness. So the reason why I connect with Personified Deity is because I have a hard time just using the title for something and having that mean something to me, right? God is not a person. Goddess is not a person. Those are titles. That's like saying, Mr. President, Mr. President, you know, Madam Prime Minister, Madam Prime Minister. There's only so much like closeness you can have to an individual when you're calling them by their title. Imagine calling your parent father, 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 father all day long. Well, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Sorry, my cold, my head is a little bit foggy. I'm trying to say that if you're trying to foster an intimate connection with someone, calling them by just a title is difficult to do. Now, particularly with parents, that is a little different because you've already established the relationship with them is based on the title. And so it's out of respect that we call them the title. But that doesn't take away the intimate relationship. Now apply that one step over to like uncles and aunts. I have an uncle. I have several, right? I have several uncles, but I only have one dad. So if I'm saying dad, not only does he know who, you know, I'm talking to, I know who I'm talking to, and I know what relationship history I'm calling into play, right? Dad holds a whole lot because there's only one dad. However, with uncles and aunts, you can have multiple of them. If I'm talking to my uncle on the phone, so I'm not looking at him, I'm not in his presence, I'm talking to him on the phone, and let's call him Uncle Rocky. I don't really have an Uncle Rocky, but okay, let's call him Uncle Rocky. Uncle Rocky, his name isn't Rocky, right? But that's his nickname. We've given him a nickname that precedes me, that comes with a whole legacy of personality traits and stories and all this stuff that is evoked when you think Uncle Rocky, all this stuff that's related to Uncle Rocky. So if I'm talking to Uncle Rocky on the phone and I'm just going, so what do you think, Uncle? Uncle this and Uncle that. Uncle, do you want to go to the grocery store? Uncle, when am I going to see you next? That there's a level of intimate connection that's missing when I'm not giving him that nickname, when I'm not adding a nickname to his title or whatever his actual name is. Let's say you call your uncle Uncle David or something, right? If you're just calling him Uncle, 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 and you're lacking the David part, you could be talking to multiple uncles, especially if you're not standing in the presence of that person. That all is going to make sense right now. So when I first started working with Oshun, who still has a presence in my path, by the way. She's not my main deity, but she's a presence in my path. I watched a video where somebody broke this down really interestingly. And she was talking about, and in fact, I think her name is Daydream Alston. Daydream Alston is sticking in my mind. I think this was her video. And if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But either way, check out her channel. She has a great channel talking about her journey into Ifa. So Daydream Alston, if I'm talking about the right person, she was talking about how when you first start working with the Orisha, once you go through initiations and you take on your holy name or whatever, you take on your practitioner name, a lot of times it's crowned by the Orisha who is crowning your head. So somebody might be named, I don't know, Lisa Oya Wajid, right? So you're adding Oya, who is the spirit of storms, into the name because that identifies you as her child. But then that means you're going to meet a bunch of other people named Oya and different combinations of names, right? And so when you are first reaching out to these deities and you're calling upon them, when you call upon them and you just say, Mother Oya, blah, 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 right? You need to add their epithets because then that helps them know who you're calling. So related to Oshun, when I would call out to Oshun, I would say, Mother Oshun, Lady of the sweet rivers, she of golden bracelets, Lady of the love for mother and child, Lady of life, Lady we cannot live without, Mother Oshun. And I would sing this whole song to her, and I would go into it until what happened was there was a resounding energy that was raised from my navel chakra up through my heart. And then I could feel this energy around me that, okay, she's heard me. And now she's here and she's listening. And I can move on with the prayers and the other things that I'm going to do right now, right? And it's something that I took with me into every other moment of prayer. How does the deity know that you're talking to them? You use their names. You use their names. So that happens to be the concept that I connect with the most in working with Personified Deity. That they are literally the spirits of nature that manifested in order to allow us to return to connection with the divine who created us by having some piece, some tip of the divine iceberg to tap into that connects most with our personality, with our spirit, with the way that we feel comfortable worshiping. And that allows us to come into the spirit so that there is not this big gap between me and Goddess. Because that's so general and it's so big a concept to think that we're on this little globe and then there's a bunch of other globes going around us, and then there's a sun over here and there's a moon over here, but then there's this other cluster of stars and then they got several moons, and then there's another planet over there, oh, and then there's Nibiru, and right, you can keep going and going and going and going until the spider web spins such a huge Woundiverse. How do you ever get to where is the keeper of the tables in this temple? Right? This is a lot. This is a lot. When I try to remove Personified Deity from my practice and just work with these general concepts of God and Goddess or divinity, I tried calling it love, spirit, the universe, but that just felt kind of like true, but also vague, right? Vague. And in the Kemetic path, we relate to the crowning divinity as Necher. And the reason why that connects with me so much is because it literally sounds like nature. And then the nature spirits that embody Necher in the actual, physical plane are called the Neteru, because they're plural, right? The Neteru, the nature spirits. So if you've ever wanted to work with Personified Deity but it felt far-fetched, the idea of archetypes doesn't quite work for you, the idea of thought forms that we create kind of seems maybe, but then what's the point of worshiping a thought form? If you can begin to, and this is only if you're interested in this, right? I'm not telling you to do this, but if you're interested in this, if you look around you at the nature around you and what's happening in the area where you live, think about the deities that you're attracted to. If you've ever been attracted to a deity and you couldn't really quite let go, that suspension of disbelief couldn't quite fully come into spirit, into form for you, think about what that deity represented. Draw a parallel to nature and see if that helps you to build a bridge. Now, once you've built that bridge and you start working with divinity, that's a whole other video, and I can do a video on how to build relationship with deity. I have done one with like certain practices that you can do around offerings and whatnot, and I could go even more in depth with that. But once you begin to build that bridge to deity and you're having conversations and you feel that you're being answered in some way, shape, or form, synchronicities are happening when you ask certain things, certain questions. You're starting to see the reflections in life around you that something is happening and something is hearing me and is reflecting back to me what I'm putting out, right? Then you've built a bridge, and then it can get really exciting, because at the tippy top of all of this is awakening divinity within yourself. So we can use power as witches, either from outside of us to create what we want, or from within us to project out what we want. Using power from outside of you always takes more energy. Think about that. If you have to reach out and grab something, that's more energy. Versus when you make connection with the emotion within yourself, that is the feeling of what it is that you want, it is easier to project a picture of it and then energetically project it into the world. Then there's, you know, the science that gets into it, where there's invisible particles of creative expansion just all around us, waiting to crystallize into form. So that's why we have to be careful of what we say and how much we... You ever just have a conversation in your head about what you should have said to so-and-so when they did something? You walk away from an argument and you're like, oh, I should have said this, or I should have said that. Or how about how they're always doing this and doing that? And like this just starts to become this like inner argument that you're still having with the person that you're no longer in the argument with. But notice your emotions start to go. Your face starts to tighten up. Your stomach might start to tighten up. You're getting even more heated. Your shoulders are hiking up because you're starting to think about all the things that you should have said and how angry you are and how pissed off they made you and all this and all that. You're creating. You are creating right then and there. Maybe not that same argument with that person, but you are creating a rich environment to then be in a situation where you now have to react again, because you're building your reaction right now. Whatever you're building in your head, you are telling the Wound Averse, I need a situation to fit that. Think about that. I need a situation to fit this. And it'll make you stop. When you're doing those kind of mental, you know, Olympics, it'll make you stop, because when you realize that you really are creating your world from within you, it'll make you a lot more careful about what you say and how much you ruminate on something. The universe doesn't have a sense of humor. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It doesn't know when you're joking. It doesn't know when you're just working something out. When your emotion starts to follow your thoughts, you are speaking your reality into existence right then and there. So why this matters is once you've built that bridge to divinity, you've figured out what your concept of divinity is. You've begun to build a bridge so that you are in contact with one specific energy of the divine, or one manifestation, one point of characteristic, one personality trait, right, of nature and life itself. You're building that bridge by songs of praise, offerings, wearing things that connect with them. I've been wearing, I was wearing a gold one, and now I've just started wearing a silver one, but scarab beetles, because literally Bastet told me to wear a scarab beetle as an amulet of protection. Now, I didn't question that. I didn't say why. I don't really know how I feel about beetles. I just said, okay. And I researched it. I got a little beetle. I started wearing it. And to me, that is me responding to what I can't explain, right? I can't explain why she told me to do this. But what I can explain is I feel better. I feel less vulnerable in the world. I feel like I have this symbol of protection. Now she wears a scarab beetle on her third eye. So it's a way for me to be in connection with the concept or the deity of Bastet and all that she represents, and carry her with me right above my heart throughout my day. It's a very small thing, but it's a part of the bridge that I'm building, that I'm offering trust that if she tells me something to do that's for my betterment, I'm going to take that leap of faith, because she's only shown me so